Chapter 1, Part 2. We're going to be, again, gathering data, our evidence, and we're going to use this to make decisions. So I'm just going to go collect my evidence. We're going to make a decision based on my null. My null is a statement of no difference. In other words, it is status quo. What is the common belief that we have out there? We don't know if it's true or not, but we've already kind of have the support to think that it might be true. The symbol used with the null is the equal to sign. However, some books use a less than or equal to or the greater than or equal to, but we're fine to use the equal sign. The alternative then is a statement of difference. In other words, it is the researcher's claim. The researcher, he or she, looks at the null and may or may not believe it. If they believe it, they're not going to probably test it. If they don't believe it, that is their alternative. What do they believe that's different than the null? And to be different then, that means you'd be not equal to. You're not sure if you're going to be greater than or less than. Or you might believe that you might be greater than, or you might believe that you might just be less than. Statistical significance is a statement. And it's a statement made in most studies. You'll see either not statistically significant or statistically significant. And what this is saying is the data that was collected is unlikely. And it's unlikely if the null is true. So it's unlikely to be gathered or observed if the null is true. Now, if you recall, I don't know if the null is true or not. That's what we're trying to do this test for, is to keep getting more and more evidence to support it. I'll never know if the null is absolutely 100% true unless I can look at the entire population. So by looking at samples, we know that we might make an error because we're not looking at the entire population. So we have these different types. A type 1 error is when I reject the null when the null was actually true. So I have these errors, and I sometimes don't know, or oftentimes don't know for sure if I've made an error because I can never look at the entire population. But if I was to reject the null when the null was really true, that is a type 1 error. A type 2 error is when I accept the null when the null was actually false. In other words, I should have rejected it, but my data supported it, so I kept it. We are only really going to focus on a type 1 error. Type 2 error is a beta error, which we'll talk. It's kind of to do with the power of a test, which is in your next statistics course. But the level of significance, alpha, is the chance of committing a type 1 error. Obviously, we want that chance to be low, so we'll be looking at that chance here later on. But what we're going to do is just gather data and try to make decisions based on that data. So for example, on page 17 in your textbook, there are 2 different bags of money vouchers. Bag A, we're going to assume to be the null, and bag B then would be your alternative. So when we start to make decisions, it's based on the evidence. It's not based on what we feel. So if I grab $60 and I look, there is only one $60 in bag A, but there's a whole bunch of them in bag B. So my evidence then is supporting bag B. It's supporting it. I could have made a mistake because there still is one in the null, so I could have grabbed that single voucher of $60. If I move to the $10 voucher, you can see that there are more $10 vouchers in bag A. However, there is one in bag B. So looking at my evidence, the $10, and looking at what's in each null and alternative hypothesis, I'm going to go with the null or bag A. The negative $1,000 voucher. If I look at my bags, there is only one in my null, so I know for sure without making an error that that had to come out of bag A. The $1,000 voucher. Well, there's none in bag A. So if I reached in and I got $1,000, I would know for a fact that it came out of bag B. And the last two, grabbing a $30 voucher. A $30 voucher happens to be in both bags. There are 2 in bag A, and there are 2 in bag B. So the evidence doesn't really point me in a direction because there's 2 in each one, so they're both equally likely. But if you handed me the bag and you told me this is bag A, I reached in and got a $30, I have no reason to doubt you, so I would probably go with the null, although the data does not support it 100%. We always assume the null is true. And if my evidence isn't supportive enough, I have to go with the null. And the $50 voucher, looking here on the 50, it would most likely support bag B. So what we've done here is we've gathered evidence and tried to make a decision. Now your decision might not match mine because mine is subjective. I don't have any basis of making that other than how I feel about looking at these two, although you would probably support me in these decisions. Next lesson we'll learn about how do I make those decisions so we all have the same agreement.